I arrived in a small town just before sunset. The bus station was nearly empty, and the streets stretched silent under the orange light. I had no plan, only the need for a bed. The closest place was an old roadside motel, its sign buzzing faintly with half-dead neon letters. The man at the reception barely looked up when I asked for the cheapest room. He slid a key across the counter with the number 6 carved into a brass tag. His voice was flat when he said, "End of the hallway." I carried my bag down the creaking corridor. The wallpaper peeled in strips, and the carpet smelled of damp dust. When I reached the door with the faded number 6, I noticed something odd. The key didn't fit. I turned it once, twice, but the lock resisted. On the third attempt, the knob gave way, almost as if the door had decided to open by itself. Inside, the air felt heavy. The room was small, but it looked ordinary at first glance. A single bed, a nightstand, a chair near the window. I dropped my bag and stepped closer. That's when I realized the details didn't stay fixed. The chair I swore was by the window now stood beside the bed. The lamp shifted from left to right when I looked again. It wasn't a trick of the eye. The furniture moved. I told myself I was just tired. Travel does that. I unpacked a little and lay down, hoping for rest. But as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard a faint whisper. It wasn't outside. It came from inside the room, from a corner that looked completely empty. The whisper grew clearer. I could not understand the words, but the tone was urgent, as if someone was warning me. My skin prickled. I sat up fast, staring into the corner. A shape formed in the darkness, tall and thin, more a shadow than a body. When I moved toward it, the figure dissolved into nothing. I didn't sleep much after that. Each time I blinked, the room rearranged itself again. The nightstands switched sides. The curtains opened a little, though I never touched them. The whispers returned, sometimes sounding right at my ear. I sat in silence until the first trace of daylight broke through the window. I decided to leave as soon as the office opened. At the front desk, a young woman replaced the man from last night. I slid the key forward and told her I had stayed in room 6. She frowned and checked the logbook. Her finger moved down the list, then stopped. "There is no room 6, she said. Her voice carried no humor. I insisted. I described the hallway, the door, the brass tag. She shook her head slowly. "This building has 5 rooms only. The hallway ends at number 5. You must be mistaken." I felt a chill run through me. My memory was sharp. I had spent hours inside that space listening to whispers. My bag was still packed from there. The tag with the number 6 was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and placed it on the desk. The woman's face turned pale. She stared at the brass tag as if it was something poisonous. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "From the man last night." "He gave it to me." Her hands trembled. "No one gave you that. This motel has never had a room 6. Ever." Behind me I thought I heard the same whisper again, distant yet familiar. It felt as if something had followed me out of the room that should not exist. I stepped back from the desk, the brass tag still lying between us. The young woman would not touch it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the number carved into the metal, as though it could burn her if she picked it up. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was in that room all night. You're telling me it doesn't exist, but I slept there. I heard things there." She shook her head. "I don't know what you heard, but I've worked here for years. There are 5 rooms only. If you want, I'll show you." She led me down the hallway. The carpet groaned under our steps, the smell of mildew even stronger in daylight. We reached the end where I had turned the night before. Only 5 doors stood in line. Numbers 1 through 5. No 6. No empty space for it either. The hallway ended with a blank wall. I felt dizzy. My hand went into my pocket again, searching for the brass key. It was still there, solid, cold. A reminder that what I experienced was not a dream. The woman looked at me with unease. Maybe you should leave. This place has history." She stopped herself, as if she had said too much. "What history?" I pressed. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "People used to talk about a guest who vanished here decades ago. Some say he stayed in a room no one else had seen. Others say the building itself swallowed him." The story died down, but sometimes travelers claim strange things. Most don't stay long enough to complain. I stared at the wall where my door should have been. My skin crawled at the thought that I had been inside something that had no place in this building. I left the motel that morning, but the whispers stayed. On the bus out of town, I swore I heard them again, faint beneath the engine's hum. At night in another city, I woke to find the same brass key lying on the pillow beside me, though I had left it on the reception desk. The next day, I tried to throw it away. I dropped it into a river and watched it sink. But when I opened my bag later, it was back inside, dry and shining. Over the next weeks, the same pattern repeated. Wherever I stayed, the key appeared. And then, sometimes, the room appeared too. A door at the end of a hallway that should not have been there. Always with the number 6. Always waiting. I tried resisting at first. I refused to open it, walking past quickly. But the whispers grew louder when I ignored the door, pulling at me, clawing at the back of my mind until sleep became impossible. Finally, in another nameless motel far from that first town, I gave in and turned the key again. The same heavy air greeted me, the same flickering furniture never quite staying in place, and the same figure in the corner, tall and thin, dissolving when I moved closer. But this time the whispers formed words I could understand, a voice low and broken repeating, "You should not be here." I wanted to run. I grabbed my bag and pulled at the door, but the knob would not turn. The figure in the corner stretched taller, bending unnaturally, its face still hidden in shadow. The whisper rose into a distorted cry that filled the room. I slammed my shoulder against the door until it gave way. The hallway outside was gone. Only blackness stretched ahead, no sound, no floor. I stumbled backward, heart racing, then blinked, and the hallway was back. The regular motel corridor, silent and empty. The next morning, when I asked the manager about the layout, he gave me the same answer as the first woman. There was no room 6, only 5 rooms, no extra door. I don't know how long this will continue. Each new town brings the same choice. Ignore the key and go mad from the whispers, or open the door and face the shifting room again. I have started to fear the second option less than the first. Last night, the shadow in the corner spoke a new phrase. Clearer, closer. "This is your room now." And when I looked down, the brass tag had changed. It no longer said 6. It bore my name instead. The first thing that caught my attention was the silence. Not the normal kind of silence you hear in small towns, but a heavy one that pressed against your chest. I arrived at the roadside motel just before sunset. Its neon sign flickered weakly, showing only half of the letters. The place looked almost abandoned, yet an old woman stood at the front desk, waiting. Her voice was rough, almost broken by age. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Do not take room number 7. I thought she was joking, maybe trying to scare me. But she repeated it slower, firmer, as if she had told that same warning many times before. I nodded and asked for another room. She gave me the key to number 4. But I noticed that on the wall behind her, a single key was missing. That evening, as I unpacked, the motel felt strange. The corridors were too quiet, the air heavy. The wallpaper was peeling, and the smell of damp wood filled the hallways. When I walked past room 7, the door looked newer than the others, like it had been replaced recently. A deep scratch ran across the wood, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. At midnight, I woke up without reason. My clock said 3:14, but the hands moved in small, jerking motions, ticking backward. I thought it was broken. Then I heard footsteps, slow, dragging, heavy footsteps moving down the corridor. I opened the door just a crack and saw a figure. He wore the clothes of a traveler, but they were dirty and torn. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes looked empty. He moved without focus, his body stiff. I recognized him from a photo I had seen in the lobby. The missing guest the old woman had mentioned a month ago. He stopped in front of room 7. He pressed his hand against the door as if waiting for it to open. The walls around him seemed to tremble. I closed my door quietly, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would break my ribs. But then I heard it, the whisper. At first it was faint, like wind pushing through cracks. Then it grew louder. The walls of my room seemed alive, voices repeating my name in overlapping tones. I pressed my hands against my ears, but the whispers crawled straight into my mind. When I tried to escape, I grabbed my bag and ran outside. The night was freezing, but I didn't care. I went straight for my car, but when I opened the door, the keys were gone. I sprinted toward the exit, but as soon as I stepped through the gate, I was standing again in front of room 7. No matter which way I turned, every path ended here. The door waited for me, silent and patient. The neon sign buzzed overhead, showing nothing but broken letters. I looked back toward the office, but the front desk was empty. The old woman was gone. The clock on the wall inside ticked louder than before. The time showed 12:61. And then, from inside room 7, I heard the lock click. The handle turned on its own. I froze, watching the door to room 7 open slowly. Darkness spilled out thicker than shadows, like it carried weight. The missing guest stepped inside without hesitation, his pale figure disappearing into that blackness. Then the whispers stopped. I should have run. Instead, I moved closer, as if something inside me wanted to know what was behind that door. My hand shook as I pushed it open wider. The room was not like the others. There was no bed, no furniture, no light, only endless dark, stretching further than the walls of the motel should allow. The clock in the hallway struck again. Each chime echoed into the room and came back distorted, like voices speaking backward. My own name echoed among them. I turned to leave, but the hallway had vanished. Behind me was only the same dark void. I stepped backward, but the floor kept stretching. My breath grew short. From the corner of the blackness, the missing guest emerged again. He looked straight at me now. His mouth opened slowly, but no sound came out. Instead, the room itself spoke. The walls whispered, "Stay." I shouted at him, demanding answers, but his body twitched like a broken puppet. His head tilted, bones cracking as if they no longer fit his skin. He raised a hand and pointed toward the center of the void. I didn't want to look, but I did. There was a clock standing in the darkness. Taller than me, its hands moved wildly, spinning forward and backward. The numbers were wrong. After 12 came 13, then 14, then symbols I had never seen. Each time the hands passed over them, I felt my chest tighten. My own pulse started to match the clock's rhythm. The man walked toward it, his body jerking with each step. When he reached the clock, he pressed his face against the glass. His skin sank into it as if it were water. His body followed, pulled inside until nothing was left. The whispers grew louder again, now all in my voice. I stumbled back, trying to find the door. Suddenly, it was there again, standing alone in the darkness. Room 7's door, glowing faintly. I ran to it and grabbed the handle, pulling with all my strength. It opened, but instead of freedom, I saw the motel lobby. The old woman sat at the desk watching me. Her eyes were colder than before. She said, "You opened it. Now you belong to this place." I turned to run past her, but my feet stopped on their own. My body wouldn't obey me. I looked down and realized I was holding the missing guest's torn jacket in my hands. My reflection in the dusty window showed his pale face, not mine. The clock behind the desk struck once more. The hands pointed to a time that should not exist. 2507. And the whispers, endless now, all spoke the same sentence. You are the last guest. The sign flickered when we pulled off the highway. A buzzing pink glow bled into the desert air, shaping the words vacancy above a weathered motel. I was the one driving, and by then my eyes felt sanded raw from the long trip. I thought the light looked broken, but then I noticed something stranger. It pulsed in rhythm with my own heartbeat. Let's stop here, said Claire from the back seat. She pressed her forehead to the window. I can't stare at the road anymore. Jonas grunted in agreement. He was already scrolling on his phone, ignoring us, but I knew he was just as tired. Mia, sitting beside me, simply whispered, "Yeah, fine." We parked under the sign. The buzz grew louder when I stepped out, as if it welcomed us. The motel office was empty, but the key rack behind the counter still held a few metal tags. One was already waiting on the desk, as though someone expected us. Room 6. We exchanged glances, but nobody asked questions. Fatigue made us obedient. Inside, the room looked ordinary. 2 queen beds, a TV bolted to the wall, curtains pulled tight. The air smelled of stale fabric. We laughed nervously about how every cheap motel feels haunted, but the laughter died quickly. The mirror above the dresser caught my attention. It was tall, framed with peeling wood, but the surface rippled faintly, as though it reflected heat. When I moved my hand, my reflection hesitated before following. It was less than a second, but enough to make my stomach tighten. "Did you see that?" I asked. Nobody answered. They were already tossing bags on the beds, claiming spots, plugging in phones. I stared again, trying to convince myself I imagined it. That night dragged in slow waves. We ordered gas station snacks instead of dinner. Jonas flipped through channels before giving up on the static-riddled TV. Claire wrote in her journal, head bent low. Maya just lay on her side, eyes open, not speaking. It began with the mirror. I caught a movement again, but this time it wasn't a hesitation. My reflection blinked when I hadn't. It tilted its head, studying me. The air grew heavy. I called out to the others, but by the time they looked, the mirror showed nothing unusual. Jonas laughed. "Man, you're fried. Too much driving." But I wasn't fried, I was certain. Then the phone rang. The motel room still had one of those beige desk phones, scratched and old. The ring cut through the silence like a blade. Nobody moved. Finally, Mia reached for it. "Hello." Her voice trembled. Her expression changed. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Then she dropped the receiver like it burned. "What was it?" I asked. Her face went pale. It was me, my voice, saying my name. The room went silent again. The neon glow from outside leaked through the curtains, staining the walls pink. I felt it pressing into us, filling the air. We should have left then, but fatigue or fear or something heavier kept us seated. Later, Claire disappeared. It happened quietly. She had been on the second bed, her journal open. I looked up from the mirror, and she was gone. No sound, no struggle. Only the indent in the blanket where her body had rested, the pen still lying across the page. Nobody answered. They were already tossing bags on the beds, claiming spots, plugging in phones. I stared again, trying to convince myself I imagined it. That night dragged in slow waves. We ordered gas station snacks instead of dinner. Jonas flipped through channels before giving up on the static-riddled TV. Claire wrote in her journal, head bent low. Maya just lay on her side, eyes open, not speaking. It began with the mirror. I caught a movement again, but this time it wasn't a hesitation. My reflection blinked when I hadn't. It tilted its head, studying me. The air grew heavy. I called out to the others, but by the time they looked, the mirror showed nothing unusual. Jonas laughed. "Man, you're fried. Too much driving." But I wasn't fried, I was certain. Then the phone rang. The motel room still had one of those beige desk phones, scratched and old. The ring cut through the silence like a blade. Nobody moved. Finally, Mia reached for it. "Hello." Her voice trembled. Her expression changed. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Then she dropped the receiver like it burned. "What was it?" I asked. Her face went pale. It was me, my voice, saying my name. The room went silent again. The neon glow from outside leaked through the curtains, staining the walls pink. I felt it pressing into us, filling the air. We should have left then, but fatigue or fear or something heavier kept us seated. Later, Claire disappeared. It happened quietly. She had been on the second bed, her journal open. I looked up from the mirror, and she was gone. No sound, no struggle. Only the indent in the blanket where her body had rested, the pen still lying across the page. The buzzing grew louder. That was when Claire's journal flipped its pages on its own. The pen scratched across the paper without a hand to hold it. I leaned closer and saw a single word repeat again and again. "Stay." Jonas kicked the journal onto the floor, but the words stayed burned into my eyes. "Stay," written over and over, as if the room itself demanded it. Mia pulled at my arm. "We can't stay here." "Please." I tried the window. The curtains were stiff, stuck together. I yanked them apart, and the sight froze me in place. The neon sign wasn't outside anymore. It was right against the glass, pressed so close I could see every flicker in the tubing. It pulsed like veins under skin. When I blinked, I swore the word vacancy had shifted, the letters bending into shapes I couldn't read. Jonas shoved me aside and punched the glass. His fist hit solid air as though the window wasn't there. The sign didn't shatter or even shake. It just glowed brighter. The phone rang again. This time none of us touched it. It rang until the sound melted into a human voice. It spoke all our names in order, slow, deliberate. First mine, then Mia's, then Jonas's, ending with Claire's. But Claire was gone. The bed where she'd vanished sank deeper, as if someone invisible lay down again. The sheets folded themselves neatly. When I looked at the mirror, her reflection was smiling now, her head tilted like a doll. Jonas lost control. He screamed at the glass, at the beds, at the air. He pulled the dresser away from the wall and threw the TV down, sparks bursting across the carpet. The neon light did not fade. Mia clung to me, shaking. "We can't fight it. It wants us." I didn't want to believe her, but the room agreed. The walls throbbed faintly with the same rhythm as the sign. The buzzing wasn't outside anymore. It was in my chest, crawling beneath my ribs. Jonas collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. His reflection stood tall, calm, smiling with the others. He whispered something, but I couldn't catch it. His body twitched once, twice, then went limp. On the bed, his imprint appeared beside Claire's. Mia screamed, and I dragged her toward the door. I didn't care about the void beyond. Anything was better than staying. I flung it open again, and this time there was no blackness. There was a hallway, but not the one we had entered. It stretched far too long, lined with doors on both sides, each one marked with the glowing number 6. At the end of the corridor, the neon sign pulsed, brighter than ever. Mia dug her nails into my arm. "Don't go in there, please." But behind us the mirror trembled. I saw Jonas rise inside it, grinning, his hand pressed flat against the glass as though testing how thin it was. Claire stood beside him, her eyes burning pink. They were waiting. I stepped into the hall, pulling Mia with me. The door shut itself behind us. The hallway floor rippled under our feet, like walking on water. Each door we passed whispered our names again and again. I didn't look inside. I knew what I'd see. We reached the end where the neon burned so bright it blinded me. I shielded my eyes, but the light seeped through my skin, my thoughts, until nothing else existed. When I woke, I was lying in the same bed. Room 6. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains. For a moment I thought it had all been a dream. Then I noticed the silence. The room was empty. No bags, no clothes, no signs of anyone else. Only me. I stumbled outside. The lot was bare sand. No office, no cars, no sign. Just open desert stretching in every direction. The motel had vanished. But when I turned back, room 6 still stood behind me, alone in the wasteland, its door open. Inside, the mirror waited. I stepped closer and froze. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. It was Mia, pounding her fists against the glass, her mouth moving in a silent scream. I dropped the door key in the sand. It shimmered pink before sinking into the ground, and then the buzzing started again.